Our podcast reviews well-known movies and contains spoilers. The podcast may contain mature subject matter and mature language. Listener discretion is advised. Enjoy the show.
Quiet on set. Places, everybody. And action.
It is time once again for the Hooked on Movies podcast. Today, we will be reviewing the third and final installment in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, The Return of the King and or Jedi, depending on how you look at it. As always, please welcome.
All right, Eric. There's only one return, and it's
Say it. Go ahead.
And ain't of the king.
It's of the Jedi. That's why I said that, because I agree with you. I agree with him on this one. Well, lead us off there, Ted.
Certainty of death. Small chance of success. What are we waiting for?
Oh, well, what I'm waiting for was that was going to be my line, and I didn't realize he was doing that one.
What are the odds of you guys picking the same line?
I'll do mine.
Okay.
My favorite line in the movie.
And Ken.
There's a dwarves that go swimming with little hairy women.
Okay.
And I am Eric. The Philadelphia Eagles are coming. The Philadelphia Eagles are coming. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I don't know. Okay, we are talking Return of the King. Ted, give us the particulars of this one.
Okay, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, directed by Peter Jackson, with a screenplay by Fran Walsh, Philippa Bavins, and Peter Jackson. It's based off of the novel The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. It has a running time of 201 minutes. It was released on the 17th of December, 2003. It had a budget of $94 million, and it has a box office gross of $1.156 billion.
And it won the Academy Award for Best Picture.
I think this is our first $1 billion movie.
Dr. Evil? Excellent.
Yes. $1 billion.
$1 billion, yes.
Return of the King stars Elijah Wood as Frodo Baggins, Ian McKellen returning as Gandalf the White, Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn, Sean Astin as Samwise Gamgee, Andy Serkis returns as Gollum, Billy Boyd as Peregrine Took, Dominic Monaghan as Meriadoc Brandybuck, Jonathan Rhys-Davies as Gimli, Orlando Bloom as Legolas, Bernard Hill as Theoden, Christopher Lee as Sauron the White, Hugo Weaving as Elrond, David Wenham as Faramir, Brad Dourif as Grima Wormtongue, Carl Urban as Eomer, Liv Tyler as Arwen, Kate Blanchett as Galadriel, Sean Bean as Boromir, and John Noble as Denethor.
Can we really classify Sean Bean still in this movie? I mean, there's a flashback for about 5 seconds, but does he really classify as being part of the last movie?
That's like Arwen in the last film. She wasn't really in it much.
Yeah.
That's true.
Are you criticizing my cast of characters?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Definitely.
I wouldn't do that, but yeah, I am.
Wow. All right.
Is it
And
Mork
Jerry
from Mork
Mathers
in it?
as the Beaver,
As the
of course.
Beaver.
Ken,
Mork
can you give
the
us a synopsis in one sentence?
Oh, it's a few sentences,
luck.
but it's not that long. The compilation of nearly 10 years' work and conclusion to Peter Jackson's epic trilogy based on the timeless J.R.R. Tolkien's classic, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, presents the final confrontation between the forces of good and evil fighting for control of the future of Middle-earth. Hobbits, Frodo and Sam reach Mordor in their quest to destroy the One Ring, while Aragorn leads the forces of good against Sauron's evil army at the Stone City.
Sweet. Ted, I'm assuming all the reviews are positive.
Yeah, the critic
Shocking.
score on Rotten Tomatoes is a certified fresh 94%. It has an audience score of 86%.
Still very
A little bit of a
impressive.
drop there.
Yeah,
I
a
think
little
it was like
bit.
95 from last
Yeah.
episode.
I could only find one negative critic that's from a reputable newspapers. Antonia Quirky from the London Evening Standard said, Viggo Mortensen's Aragorn is the good king of the title, and while the actor may look fetching in a crown and cloak, he doesn't have half the gravitas of Sean Bean's Boromir in the first film.
Ooh.
Ooh,
I mean,
I know.
After seeing Game of Thrones and stuff like that, it's like maybe in retrospect, but I mean, at the time, come on.
On the positive side, I'll give you two of the heavy hitters. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone, he said, it pops your eyes, excites your senses, and brings you in as close as a whisper for scenes of startling emotion. And then Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times said, Return of the King is such a crowning achievement, such a visionary use of all the tools of special effects, such a pure spectacle that it can be enjoyed even by those who have not seen the first two films.
But it would help to see the first two.
It would add a lot of background information. You would make you wonder why two little guys are walking towards a lava pit, then one decides not to do the job he was set out to do.
Exactly.
You know?
It definitely justifies you blowing your head off at the end of this movie. You definitely have more justification for that.
Well, we will definitely talk about the end of the movie.
Cool. Well, first time we saw it, for me, it was sometime last year. I'm going to be honest, I fell asleep during it, so I'm going to count this as my real, true first time watching this movie from start to finish with my eyes fully open. Ken, how about you?
In the theater.
Ted?
I saw it in the theater as well, opening weekend. Maybe it wasn't opening weekend. I did see it in the theater, and this is the only one of the three that I only saw once in the theater.
Justin, I'm assuming theater for you?
Oh, I saw this in the theater 3 times. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right.
The only movie I think I saw more in the theaters was like the first or second X-Men movie.
It's interesting.
Okay.
I like those.
So we're kind of leading to your review of this one. You're kind of throwing your cards early on that, but
Anybody who has listened to the previous 2 episodes is not going to be shocked.
yeah, right, exactly. No one's going to be like, "What?"
Like,
All right,
you really
well,
buried the lead there.
I can't believe it. Justin, give us the beginning of this movie.
Smeagol is fishing with his
Smeagol.
cousin Deagle, who discovers the one ring in the river. Smeagol's mind is ensnared by the ring, and he kills his cousin for it. Increasingly corrupted physically and mentally, he retreats to the Misty Mountains and becomes known as Gollum. Centuries later, during the War of the Ring, Gandalf leads Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and King Theoden of Rohan to Isengard, where they reunite with Merry and Pippin. Gandalf retrieves Saruman's Palantir, or crystal ball, and the group returns to Edoras to celebrate their victory at Helm's Deep. Pippin looks into the Palantir, seeing Sauron and a burning tree. Gandalf deduces that the enemy plans to attack Gondor's capital, Minas Tirith. He rides there to warn Gondor's corrupt steward, Denethor. Pippin, who accompanies him, swears fealty to Denethor, whose now dead heir, Boromir, had saved his life. On Gandalf's instruction, Pippin triggers the lighting of the beacons, which call for help from Rohan. Frodo, who carries the ring, and Sam continue their journey towards Mordor, unaware that Gollum, now their guide, plans to betray them and take the ring for himself. The trio witness the Witch King of Angmar, Lord of the Nazgul, setting off towards Gondor with his army of orcs. Gollum conspires to frame Sam for eating food and desiring the ring. Influenced by the growing power for the ring, Frodo is taken in by the deception and orders Sam to go home. Gollum then tricks Frodo into venturing into the lair of the giant spider Shelob. Frodo narrowly escapes and is confronted by Gollum, who falls down a chasm after the scuffle. Shelob discovers, paralyzes, and binds Frodo, who is wounded and driven away by a returning Sam, who, mourning Frodo's apparent death, takes the ring. Sam realizes his mistake when a group of orcs takes Frodo captive, but manages to rescue Frodo as the orcs fight among themselves. Now inside Mordor, the hobbits continue towards Mount Doom, their destination.
It was just my destination.
So your first part of the movie, you get a little introduction onto who Smeagol is with some acting by Andy Serkis, right? So that kind of gives you a little backstory. As Ken, you're always talking about backstory. How is this?
He was
this
ugly
sufficient
then,
enough?
too.
He was. He's always ugly.
He actually improved. He grew into his looks later on in life. I didn't know that was his cousin. I mean, I figured that's because we know that from the book.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they glancingly say it or anything else like that. You know.
Well, and his name rhymes, so I mean,
Yeah.
they've got to be related.
They're kind of like hobbits. They're Harfoot or something like that. Kind of similar halfling things. Thousands of years before our story takes place.
That ring really attracts them, whereas like the hobbits can like push that off and not succumb to the ring's evil. They're right off the bat jumping down each other's throat, trying to kill each other for this ring that they just found. I would think it would take a little time for that ring to kind of make their senses go crazy. In the book, is it any different, or do they go over at it right at the beginning?
No, because the thing about Smeagol is that he's malevolent. He has that in his mind, in his heart, already. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things. The fact that he would kill someone for that, even his family member that he loves, he's not a good person. he's a malevolent being.
Well, it seems like his cousin wanted to do the same thing to him. He started choking him first.
His cousin stopped, though, in the movie, so he's like, oh, what am I doing? But the thing about the ring is that the ring has a presence unto itself, and it's just this corruption. That's what happened with Boromir, and Boromir only touched it the once by holding it up in the snow. And just being close enough to it, these guys just went nuts. They couldn't handle it.
Or does the ring enhance the most negative parts of the character's personality and bring that out to them?
That's a good point, actually.
In great detail.
I can see that.
I mean, I completely agree, Justin, that Smeagol is not a good person. But I think there is good in him because we saw the dual personality in the Two Towers. So there is a good person that wants to do good inside of Smeagol. I just think that the ring just enhances and just brings forth, I hate to use the word demonic, but it's almost the absolute worst aspect of your personality, that you hide from everybody, that you're an evil, like that there's an evil inside of you. Yeah. And it manifests itself that way. And it completely takes over these two guys. But Ken is right. It is kind of stark to see how fast it takes a hold of these two characters, because Frodo's pure of heart. Okay, I completely understand that, and that's why he's the person to carry the ring. But even Sam, when he holds the ring, it doesn't affect him the same way. And Sam's pure of heart, too, to a certain extent.
But Sam's motivation is to help Frodo succeed. That's right. All Sam wants. So he doesn't desire the ring. That's why he's able to resist it. It's funny because, like, with Gollum and with Smeagol, he eventually becomes Gollum, but he's not one person who made a bad choice along the way. He is a continuous string of 1,000 years of bad choices that he continues to make. He's a manipulator, and we see that in this part where it's like all these textbook psychological manipulations. You're like, oh my God, are we watching The Bachelor? It's like, what is this? Like, oh, what's that on Sam? He orchestrates everything, and it's funny because it's like his goal is not to break a promise that he made. So it's funny that he's keeping that code, but he's going to bring Frodo to Shelob, who's a giant spider that's going to kill him and eat him, and then he'll take the ring afterwards.
Right.
So he is not altruistic at all. So
No. But there is an aspect of his personality that is good.
Oh, yeah. It sure seems it, right?
Yeah,
that's why it's so bittersweet, because you're like, oh, he's helping them through all these dark times, and it's like, oh, but he's leading them to doom.
Maybe they need more backstory here on him because we don't really know who he is. We just see them on a boat fishing.
Ken.
And we're automatically saying that he's evil to begin with.
Ken, do not make the movie any longer.
Hey, there's a lot of things in this movie you can cut.
Look at it this way. That does what it's supposed to do for the character. You could see where he came from, right? Like, do you need to see his house? Do you need to see what his mom looked like? It's like, you don't need that.
But
it's
I want to kind of see
growing up, he's beat up by bullies.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Stay out of Riverdale.
Broadcast news. Yeah.
Right.
So,
God. Yeah.
We don't really know his true character before the ring. All we know is they're fishing. His cousin falls into the water, and he's probably concerned about it. But that's about it. As soon as we see the ring, both of them, they're just obsessed right away. Like we talked about earlier, Frodo and Sam, and I mentioned this in the other episodes. Most of the group isn't turned by this ring. They're not desiring this ring. It's not like Smeagol actually had held the ring yet. He was already trying to choke him to death before he even had touched the ring. That's how much power this ring had over him. And I kind of would have liked to known.
Or how evil he is to begin with.
If he was greedy to begin with, right?
Oh, had to be. Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, besides that, it's a thing of gold. It's like, think of like a pirate or something like that. If you picture them in your head, it's like someone who would kill you for a little bauble like that, He is greedy and he's sneaky, and obviously his cousin got it, and he's like, give it to me for my birthday. He's like, I've already given you far more than I could afford. he's got like likable character features to him. You're like, oh, I'm really rooting for this guy, but I'm also not, because he's also very duplicitous and he's clearly trying to double cross Frodo here. He says as much at the end of the Two Towers. He's like, oh, but she can do it. He's not going to do the dirty work himself. I mean, when we get into it a little bit later, just like him and Sam and all that, he's brutal.
I mean, he's a likable character in the Two Towers. He's not a likable character at all in this movie.
I agree. I think there's a big difference.
Yeah, he's changed.
Well,
big time.
because he feels that
Smeagol?
Frodo betrayed
Are you
him.
talking about Smeagol?
Yeah.
Oh, Smeagol's not likable at all in any of these movies.
You feel
No.
sorry for him in the second
I don't
movie.
feel sorry for him. I would have stabbed him in like the first 5 minutes. He's schizophrenic. He's bipolar. He's evil. You should have
You
killed
would stab
him.
the Pillsbury Doughboy, so what are you talking
If
about?
the Pillsbury Doughboy looked like that, I probably would have stabbed him. Yes.
Well, that's the thing. Is right at the beginning, Sam hears his plan.
Yeah.
It's not to ignore that is ridiculous. I don't care what Frodo is saying.
He ignored the fat hobbit.
And I understand in the second movie, Frodo wants to believe that he can change because he feels that the ring is changing him. So he likes to think he can go back.
It's about redemption.
But now, though, a thing that really wants to kill you, and he knows Sam isn't lying. It's not like later on in the movie where he starts to think that Sam is against him. In the beginning of this movie, he still thinks that Sam is with him and that, Sam is his protector. But he still just totally ignores it. I mean, if I'm Sam, I'm still probably...
But look at the difference in this movie of Frodo. This is more Frodo's movie than the last two, really. The first one you could argue has some good Frodo stuff, but the second one doesn't have hardly any Frodo and Sam. Then you get to this third movie, and it's like, okay, we're starting to see what's going on. Frodo's exhausted. He's clearly being affected by the weight of the ring and carrying it and all that. He's depending on these two characters, like Sam's cooking meals and Smeagol and Gollum are taking him through stuff and all that, and he's acting benevolent towards Smeagol there. It's because, just like you suggested, he's afraid that he's losing himself to the ring. And the only thing that's pretty much keeping Gollum from throttling him in his sleep is Sam. It's like this classic manipulation that you're watching go down.
I guess. Yeah.
Okay, we were talking about in the last movie that Smeagol, Gollum, the CGI was awesome. Do we feel like it's a step down a little bit in this movie? I know it's made at the same time, but I feel like it's not as strong as it was in the Two Towers for whatever reason. I am
going to agree with you on this because that was my criticism for the last one. Like, there's one scene specifically where I watched like Merry, and he was coming out of Rohan, and he had just gotten the sword from Eowyn. He's not even in the same place as her. Like you could tell, like when he's swinging the sword around, and then they put him on like a little pony as everybody's driving by, and I'm like, why does this look so funky? It needs some sort of like remaster where they can go in and put like filter on it or something to make it look the same.
Where I think it's really bad is when Aragorn and Legolas are outside and you see the sky in the background. It looks like a blue screen that they're in front of. There's no doubt about it in my mind that they're not in New Zealand at that particular time. They're in some type of blue screen. It looks bad.
There's some really parts that are kind of like that. Like, it doesn't take away from like the overall experience for me, but watching it now in like high definition, like I was talking about the last one, sometimes it takes you out of it. Like, if I'm going to look at this with a critical eye, I'd be like, yeah, maybe this was rushed.
Justin, are you watching it in 4K?
I don't think so. I think it's just 1080p.
Okay. I was just curious if there was any real difference, because there are some movies, older movies, 70s and 80s, where the 4K remaster is just horrifically bad and even worse than the 1080p or the DVD. So I wasn't sure if any of us have seen this in 4K. Anyone?
I watched it in 4K.
Did you notice
you
any
said the
difference?
last one was great.
Some of the things that you're talking about here, I like the scene that Ken's talking about with Aragorn and Legolas. But as far as Smeagol goes, I thought Smeagol's character was still done really well.
I think that's the best CGI in this that they did, but there's some whack parts when you get towards the end.
Yeah, like we said before in the Two Towers, they used a lot of the money for the CGI on his character. If you think about it, back when these movies were all made together, like motion capture was just brand new.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't as widely used as it, or nearly as technologically advanced as it is right now. So here again, it's the Star Wars Attack of the Clones problem. Like, the battle scenes sometimes don't add up, but I think that the 4K version of the Ghost Warriors is still pretty good.
Oh,
It
that's gotta be
holds
good,
up.
yeah.
If I'm going for a criticism of this movie, the CGI is not going to be my criticism because that's by far not the most frustrating part of this movie.
You're just going to hold it as CGI of the era.
Yeah, it's CGI of the era, and it's not as bad as Attack of the Clones.
Which is what,
And-
4 or 5 years earlier? Isn't that like mid-90s?
No. It's
2002.
around the exact same time.
2000?
And-
This is probably filmed in what, 99, 2000 for all these movies?
2000, I think.
Yeah.
Lucas was using a different technology for his CGI than what Peter Jackson was using for his. I mean, that's a whole thing for Attack of the Clones.
I mean, if that's one thing I'll say
Episode,
positive
but-
about this movie is I did not really think that the CGI was that bad in this third one.
Yeah,
in this one.
Yeah, I think
I'm not
it's
saying
great at some parts, but
I'm not saying
it
it's
definitely
bad.
has some chinks in the armor.
The tree bear.
Tree Bear. Or not Tree Bear, Tree Beard.
Sounds
Tree
like
bear.
something that would be in Strange Brew.
Yeah.
That scene looks horrible. It doesn't look good at all. When they
No, it doesn't.
first see him,
See, I disagree.
I think
it
it
doesn't
in the
take
I think
second
it
account
looks
of
bad. In some aspects, it kind of looks like he's in front of a painting a little bit when Gandalf and everybody else first meets up with him in the beginning of this movie. I just don't think it looks good.
I think it looks better than the second movie, to be honest with you, because that was my criticism, that like when they picked up Merry and Pippin, it's just like they look
that
like
was
they're
wor-
floating
that
in
was
space.
worse. Yeah,
That
You
was
know?
worse.
Yeah, that was not good. But
I think this looks a lot better than that one. But, it's one of those things, I don't want to act like it's perfect, but it is something that I do like, and it's like, I will forgive those little mistakes there.
By the way,
This-
what happened to Christopher Lee in this movie?
he dies.
Oh, he
doesn't
got
die.
crushed under... Oh, he certainly
Yeah, he does.
got stabbed there.
I thought Christopher Lee was trapped in his castle, and they said that not to do anything because he
He
can't
was
do any more harm in there.
He was
Grima
trapped up
stabbed
at
him.
the top. He falls onto the spikes.
Is that the extended version? Because I didn't see that in the.
I watched
in the
the
original.
regular one. I think
I
it
don't
was the
remember
regular
seeing
one,
that in the
but-
regular one either.
Okay, maybe
Oh.
it's the extended then.
It
Yeah.
must be
Maybe
the
it is the
extended, yeah.
There's an
there-
extended version. There's no Christopher Lee at all in the movie.
In the book, technically, those two survive, and they end up going and enslaving Hobbiton. And then,
Move to Miami.
Sam and Merry and Pippin and Frodo actually kind of save the day. I mean, it's just kind of a different take that they were going for. It's funny because he's kind of barely in the movie, but it's just like he's super snide about it. What did you guys think of Denethor, the steward of Gondor, and the way he treated Faramir and all them?
Is he selfish in his own right because he wants to rule, or is he under a spell because he doesn't even recognize his own son and is ready to burn him to death until
Well, that's
the end?
later in the movie. He's crazy with
crazy.
power. He's been ruling for so long because there's been an absence of the king that the powers went straight to his head. Without the ring, the power has corrupted him. He kind of reminds me of Jack Nicholson's character in A Few Good Men, where he's spent so much time in a forward area that it's kind of crazy and he's kind of nuts, but he's very power hungry. He's lost all sense of reality. That the fact is that he's just a steward and he's not the king, but he's been acting like the king and he thinks he's the king. It's a very fine line that he walks, and the loss of his beloved first son has sent him over the edge.
Yeah, he's
And-
nuts with grief. Yeah.
It's a culmination of a bunch of different things. And being that close to Mordor has to do something to somebody like that mentally. You're always on worry about an attack.
True, but he does seem to snap out of it once he's burning himself alive. He realizes what's going on. So that's why I'm wondering if he's under a spell to begin with. I mean,
when I was
kinda-
watching this, I was thinking about you guys because it was something that I think one of you said was, does Gandalf have powers to see the future? And
Right.
he kind of alludes to it a little bit, and he's like, don't
Yeah.
worry, he'll remember you before the end. You know,
Right.
and
Right.
he does, so...
Which
Yeah.
is weird because when Gandalf does that, he doesn't see success. One reason or another, he sees those type of little things here and there. Like he
Mhm.
doesn't know if Frodo's alive, but in his heart he believes he's alive. But he doesn't know it for sure, right? So he's very limited, I guess, to what type of future he could see. I guess it's like Yoda, At times you can see, certain things happening to your friends.
On the same level, Sauron can't see Frodo and Sam either. The people who have these powers are blinded by whatever Frodo has unfortunately, there's not really a good explanation as to what it is. It's a fantasy created by a genius. We just have to go along for the ride with. And, some people want to go along for the ride and some people don't. That's the way it is. There has to be some suspension of disbelief, because it's a fantasy story.
I think with Denethor, for me, that's one of the breakout performances of the movie, where he's got the gravitas, he's got the ability to kind of like rein you in, and you're just like, oh wow, we saw Theoden, we saw Aragorn, we saw like all these other people, but it's like, this is like true madness, and he's not evil, but you're like, he's doing the wrong thing, and it's just such a compelling performance for me.
I agree. The first time I seen it, and then consecutive times, his performance brings me in, because it makes you wonder, what's he going to do to, is it Pippin?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder exactly what he's going to do to him.
What Eric wants to do to him.
Yeah, right. But
humiliating him and all that, like when he makes him sing and all that, and he's in tears.
Right.
Yeah, what is up with that? It's like a musical.
He's got a gorgeous voice.
Sing for me, slave. Yes.
Kind of, and it's like he's humiliating him in that sense. He's like, "What is your song not good enough for the ears of the steward?"
Do we turn in the West Side Story all of a sudden here? I was like, why the hell is he singing?
Yeah, you get the battle of the sharks versus the jets.
I do remember listening it to the first time in the theater, and I thought it was really, really well done, and it was moving. I enjoyed his singing the song. I'm just kind of surprised that's what the steward wanted to hear.
Is he eating raw blood stuff? I mean, he's got like blood dripping down.
Tomatoes, it looks like.
Oh, it's a tomato.
That's the tomato, yeah.
He's eating like raw meat or something. Like, geez, a vampire.
But there's a connection there though too, because he is sending all of those men off to their death,
right,
including his son. So the blood dripping down his mouth. There's a connection there between
the heads
two
that are returned, the grapes,
right? Which is a really interesting thing, that the heads are used as in the catapult fodder to scare the people of Minas Tirith. That's pretty interesting.
I mean, thinking about it earlier, he's talked about by his sons as being a great man. So
he probably was at one time.
Yeah, so something happened, and it sounds like it happened very recently because
Boromir dying. Yeah, he's obsessed with these. Like, tell me what happened to my son. Oh, he died because of me.
Boromir he talked very highly of his father, if memory serves me correctly, in the first film.
He treated Boromir well. And he didn't treat Faramir well.
Maybe he treated him well up to a certain point, and then recently...
he did try to burn him alive.
True that, but he also tried to burn himself alive with him.
True that.
Be the epitome of treating somebody bad, you're going to try to burn him alive.
Yep, I agree.
How much worse could it really get?
I just like to point how this just tied back to the elf episode. What's more vulnerable than a tomato?
Another one of Eric's favorites.
The hits just
my goodness.
It explodes like a tomato. So.
I'll go into part 2. As King Theoden gathers his army, Elrond tells Aragorn that Arwen is dying. Having refused to leave Middle-earth, that's why if she doesn't go to the Grey Havens, then she'll lose her mortality. I actually did look this up. The elves can give up their mortality if they love a human and they're loved in return. That's how it works. It's reciprocation. So Elrond gives Aragorn an Endil reforged from the King Elendil's sword Narsil and urges him to commit to claiming Gondor's throne, to which he is the heir. Joined by Legolas and Gimli, Aragorn travels the paths of the dead and pledges to release the ghosts there from their curse should they come to Gondor's aid. Meanwhile, Faramir, who was earlier overwhelmed and driven back to Minas Tirith by the Witch King, is gravely wounded in a suicide charge. Believing his sons to be dead, Denethor falls into madness. Gandalf marshals the defenders, but a huge orc army breaks into the city. Denethor attempts to burn himself and Faramir on a pyre, but Pippin alerts Gandalf, and they rescue Faramir. Denethor, set ablaze in agony, jumps to his death, which is always a crazy thing to see. I remember seeing that in the animated version. It was just crazy. Theoden arrives and leads his army against the orcs. Despite initial success against the orcs in the ensuing battle, they are decimated by the Oliphant-riding Haradim, and the Witch King mortally wounds Theoden. However, his niece, Eowyn, slashes the Witch King with Merry's help. Theoden dies in his niece's arms. Aragorn then arrives with his army of the dead to overcome Sauron's forces and the oath fulfilled. The dead are released from their curse. as we had kind of alluded in the last episode, the song Battle of Evermore from Led Zeppelin is actually based on the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, which is what we just discussed. So, Led Zeppelin
Cool.
song.
That's awesome. I like that song. Also, too, you referenced Misty Mountain.
Yeah, Misty Mountain early, yep.
Misty
Which
Mountain Hop.
I don't know if that has anything to do with it, because I think that's just about, like,
I would be surprised if it doesn't. But
packing my bags for the Misty Mountains, I suppose, but...
So when we talk about Arwen and saying that she's dying, is she really dying, or is it he looking at it as a human? She probably has a good 30, 40, 50 years still left in her.
She seems in pain, right?
it looks like
but
she's dying.
is she in pain because she's being separated from the love of her life, because she's going away? So I thought it was pain from...
She's pissed, I'll tell you that much, right? Because her father had a vision, and she saw the vision of the son that she was going to have with Aragorn, and she's like, you didn't tell me. I didn't know it was true. Bullshit. He knew it was true. He was just being an elitist asshole.
Okay, if he knows it's going to be true, then doesn't that tell us they're going to win?
He was trying to prevent it. That's the problem.
He was trying to prevent them winning?
No, not that. No, it had
he's
nothing
trying
to do with them
prevent
winning.
Aragorn from marrying his daughter.
Right,
Yeah.
but if he foresees them having a child together, doesn't that say that they're going to win this battle, that they're going to win this war?
The
could
future in
potentially,
motion
but-
always is.
Yeah, exactly. Who could say what's can happen or will happen? But that was just one of those things that really kind of separated them, and then he had no choice but to give Aragorn the sword reforged.
If he sees something like that and sees that there is a possibility that they could win this all, why doesn't he put more resources in trying to defeat this evil? Why are
These
they
guys are
running
trying
away?
to leave. These guys
Right.
are all trying to pack up at the Grey Havens and leave Middle Earth and go to, essentially their version of heaven.
Their retirement home.
Kind of like a different dimension across the ocean or something. So they're trying to leave this world to the men to figure out at this point, because they've been here fighting this fight for like thousands of years.
Elrod was part of the original fight
Right.
outside of Mount Doom.
Yeah, and he's been around even before that.
We really don't get a good reason why they're leaving now. Out of all times, why they're leaving now. It seems almost like it's a chicken move, it's a chicken-ass move to leave the men in this predicament, even though they send them out to destroy the ring. They get them together and they send them out in the first movie. It just seems kind of weird that there's this kind of like, we don't think your guy's going to win, but I see a vision that you are going to win, and you're going to marry my daughter, and you're going to have a child.
They don't see anything about anybody winning. They see the possibility of a child. That's all.
Mhm.
That's all they see. So that could have been in
how does
Rivendell.
how does that child exist unless they win?
You read way into it, because that doesn't have anything to do with Minas Tirith and all that. That's just like, oh, there's this child. That could be something that happened, where they live there. The issue is they're trying to leave because they don't think everything is going to succeed, and they're like, this is going to be the problem of men. They're elitists, right? They think they're above everyone. They're above men. They're above dwarves. They act it all the time. If you look and see like what happened with the last one with Helm's Deep, it's like, oh, they didn't expect help from the elves. And they show up and they're super organized and all of that, and they just look different than everybody else. And the elves look down on the humans, and they look down on the dwarves and all that. So Elrond may respect Gandalf, and he may respect another king or anything else like that, but he is an elitist. He is an upper class, royal noble. So he doesn't feel accountable to anybody. Maybe with the exception of like Lord Celeborn or Galadriel, who are the three elven kings. So he doesn't have to explain to anybody anything. And that's why he was talking to his daughter. He's like, I don't have to explain stuff to you. And she's pissed because he's withholding this. But I don't think anywhere in there that he has the expectation that they're going to actually win.
And he's been let down by man
And that
on numerous occasions, where man has had a chance to correct the issue and doesn't. Yeah, they've kind of just given up on the fact that man will overcome and achieve what the necessary things that are there. But he also knows that Aragorn's different, but he still doesn't look at him as an equal.
he's not good
Like-
enough
No,
for
and
his daughter.
And I know
Right.
what he's not looking at him. My thing is, if she's pissed at him because he's got a vision of them having a child together, are they having a child together even if they lose? I understand maybe I'm reading into it a little bit, but she gets on her horse and rides back to give him hell because she's actually seen the vision herself. Dad has visions, so I guess she has visions too.
I don't know how to explain it. It's actual magic in this circumstance where it's like, hey, maybe she gets some sort of inheritance of magic. Maybe she wandered into a part of the woods that was magic and allows. Who knows? They don't really explain that in the movie. In the book, it's like, okay, you've got this going on, and there's more to explain to you. Hey, these guys have been living together for 80 years in Rivendell. That's why we look at Aragorn. He's way older than you think.
Well, that's the other thing is Aragorn. What is his life expectancy? I mean, we talk about that he's a man, but he's already 80s. I think we said 87 years old.
He's from a line of people that were longer lived than just like your average human. So for sure.
But I know the original actor at the time. I think he was 42 when he played this role, or he was 42 in one of these movies. That tells me that he's kind of like middle of the road here. He's lived half of his life the way he is presenting himself here.
Well,
and you see
Elrond
him at
also
the end,
told her, even if she does become human, she's going to outlive him. I mean, she's going to live longer than a normal human as well. Yep. She's just becoming mortal, where she can die.
That's
it's a
the romantic part of this.
It's a double-edged sword, because she gives up her mortality, which will result in her death, but she's also going to outlive her husband and possibly her kids. It's one of those things, and that's
the kid's
probably why he didn't tell her about the child. How long do you want to outlive your child, and do you want to see everybody die?
Well, that's a good question. Does the child have a long lifespan, since he comes from two people who have longer lifespans?
Again, I love to answer that question, guys.
That's
but
a whole nother
nothing
series.
to do with the movie.
It's a whole nother trilogy.
If you're interested
it's nothing but a vision, man.
But it's still a vision that, I mean, if the vision has no weight,
it does to her. Yes.
And that's all that matters.
Why does the vision mean anything to us then?
Because she loves him.
Is there a possibility that the vision comes true?
I would imagine so.
It's one of those things that's not covered in this movie, so we can't really discuss it.
This is like Sir not appearing in this movie from the Holy Grail, man. Come on.
Not appearing in this movie.
I guess so. I just don't understand why this vision is so important if it isn't real.
Yeah.
It causes her to go back.
But it's not a real vision.
It's her
not
father.
A real vision.
It's not about the kid. It's about her father not trusting her. And it's about him not approving of her relationship.
So I'm going to get mad at my father for having a vision that will never happen.
Yes.
So I'm going to be pissed because he doesn't talk to me about it.
But she wants the possibility of it being true. That's the thing.
That's
wants
what
the
possibility. saying.
No,
that there's a possibility of it being true.
It's not what you're saying. You're saying that it has to come true.
No,
for it to be a
that's
vision.
A possibility that it's going to be true. I'm not saying that it is definitely going to be true. It's a possibility.
She wants anything to be able to stay and be with the love of her life. And the fact that she had this vision and she knows that her dad had a similar vision pisses her off enough that she leaves and makes the decision to go be with the person that she loves. It's a love thing, dude. That's all it is. Yeah, and this is a minor point of the movie.
It's not a minor part of the movie.
Oh my God, it is.
Her going back to him because of the vision.
This movie's 4.5 hours long.
She is ready to leave him forever until she sees this vision. So you're telling me this is such a minor thing? This is a minor part of the movie?
It is kind of a minor thing in the movie, yeah. I mean,
let's say we take it out of the movie.
Oh my God!
Let's just say we take this part out of the movie.
It's still in the book, though, right? It's still in the book.
Shaves 15 minutes off, maybe.
No, let's just say we take this out completely. Well, we're talking about the movie. Who cares a shit about the book? I don't read. Anyway, that's why I watch movies.
This leads to how does he get the sword? Right? He needs the sword because that's his birthright, so he can prove that he's the king. So everything we're just talking about is the modus operandi, which gets the sword to Aragorn and then, puts him on the path to the land of the dead. That's all it does. So it's like that other stuff is just like, all right, some romantic fluff for you. It does exist in the book, absolutely. It's just like for the movie, it's like, all right, I could see where you're coming from a little bit. This
doesn't happen unless she freaks out about this vision, goes back and has that sword made, and then the sword's brought to him. It's a major part of the movie. Come on, it's not a minor part of the movie.
Glad you feel that way.
Because they have to go see the ghost. He defeats the ghost because he has that sword. That sword's not there.
Right.
They don't win.
Disagree with you a little bit here, because there's some other stuff to probably cover before this hits
all of the things that I thought that we were going to actually argue about, this is by far the least thing that I thought.
This trilogy is about a love story, too. It is a major part of this movie.
Okay,
not going to disagree with you, sure. I don't think there's much more there than you're thinking. I think it just gets us where we need to go. Again, my opinion. You know, we got to see a little Liv Tyler in this one. We got to see some Hugo Weaving. I think that from the first movie, this is like another strong performance that they had.
We get to the part that's really really awesome. I loved everything with the dead. I think that's a really interesting thing about how they turned their backs on everybody and now that they're kind of like these evil spirits. And
the comedy from Gimli just constantly trying to blow the green spirit away.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Stepping
too.
on the skulls and all that. Yeah. And it was really cool.
It's really well done. And I like even the fact you think that they're turning their back on him. And then it's like all the ghosts like team up against the leader and are like, hey, we have a chance to redeem ourselves, to rest at peace. But even they don't trust the king. Everybody's like not trusting each other. Like the elves don't trust mankind. The ghosts don't trust the king. It makes you wonder if some over the course of the thousands of years in between where they betrayed the king and now if other kings have tried to use them.
I think they've just been trapped in their own little world for thousands of years. And actually, I do not like the ghost. I feel like, okay, we just need the ghost and we'll win this whole thing. In fact, why do we even fight? Let's get the ghost on our side, let the ghost take care of it, because it looks like the ghost just come and just annihilate everybody, right? The ghost can't get killed. The only one that can go up against the ghost is Aragorn, because he's got that sword. Outside of that, nobody else can do anything to the ghost.
We don't actually get to see the Nazgul fight the ghosts. Because
and I mean, they're ghosts.
Because Theoden's niece kills the Witch King.
And is he the only one that's left because of what happened in the first movie when the rest of the kings maybe drowned in the?
No, they all got those flying dragons, like the dragon steeds. They got those instead of the horses, so they're all around.
So they're still
just
around.
The only one.
We just don't see much of them, or I don't know if I even see them.
You see them in the Battle of Osgiliath and all that, where they start picking people up off the towers. So in the first part of the movie, you definitely see them a lot.
I just don't see how they get killed or get knocked off. So I guess that's why I don't think about them much.
Do, man. I mean, in terms of that, I mean, they're not completely unstoppable, but it's like, I mean, if this was like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that, you would have to make some serious rolls to, be creative.
To kill them off.
Aragorn fights them off with fire, so maybe that's a weakness that they have, but I don't know.
Being stabbed in the face really takes care of one, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like,
but it had to be
know
done
ye
by
not
a woman.
the prophecy? No living man can harm me, and no man am I.
And that's only for
my favorite
him,
part.
It's only for that Witch King. It's not for any of the other kings, right? The other kings
He's the only one
killed.
He's the only one with that prophecy, correct? So yeah, but I love it, and the whole idea that the little foil is Mary. That's one of my favorite parts of the book and my favorite part of the movie. I love Éowyn as a character. She's such a great character in the book and all that, and Miranda Otto did such a great job in this one. I love it.
I agree. To a certain extent, I don't think she gets enough credit. You compare her to Liv Tyler, she has a much better performance, and there's more meat on the bone.
Better actress, man. This is Liv Tyler's, like what we were talking about. She started out doing videos for Aerosmith, and then she started doing like Empire Records.
Steven Tyler's your dad.
Yeah,
she was awesome in Empire Records.
Yeah, she's not a bad actress, but you're talking about someone who's like a Shakespearean stage actress doing a movie and all that, and it's like, of course she's going to be a better, more compelling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. But
she
think
doesn't
there's
have the
as
name
much
cachet.
Yeah, she's fantastic. She's gorgeous in this, and I love her. One of my absolute favorite characters.
Kind of feel bad for her because you kind of wish that she would have actually hooked up with Aragorn.
Well,
her uncle thinks that they're going to be a cool couple together.
Did you see who she was standing next to at the coronation?
Mm-hmm. No, I didn't see that.
She's with Faramir. Yeah, her and Faramir fall in love.
You talk about someone who's absolutely worthy and deserving in all this, like someone who really is a great character.
Is the sloppy seconds. Okay, got it.
I mean, to the king.
Yeah.
to a king who tells her that he can't give her what she wants. That breaks her heart.
But he says that really late into the movie. I mean, she's the one that kind of
Is there really a late part of this movie?
But it does seem like he's kind of keeping her as, on the side just in case it doesn't work out with Liv Tyler.
I don't think that that's what he's doing. He's not deliberately trying to hurt her.
Probably not.
I don't think he knows how to tell her without being not necessarily cruel, but how to, let her down gently that isn't going to happen because, I'm committed to somebody else. Had he not been living with Arwen for 80 years and falling in love with her, definitely they probably would have.
What if Arwen does leave?
That's a whole different
And that's what I'm saying. He doesn't really tell her.
Oh my God, we're going to go back to the prophecy.
Yeah. Like they were talking about here, the idea of like the elephants, the Oliphants they called them and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. What about the effects in this part?
I think it's awesome. It reminds me of like Hannibal crossing the Alps and into Rome. Really kind of badass. I think it's ironic that they kind of use an Achilles type of reference that's the weak part of the elephant is the heel.
Like the AT-ATs and Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly, kind of like that. Yep. There's a lot of imagery here from ancient history too. I mean, you have the Vikings that are King Theoden, but the elephants are reminiscent of Hannibal crossing the Alps and fighting the Romans. It's very, very cool, I thought.
I think they look cool, but I think my biggest problem with this battle is the city of stone itself.
Oh,
it just looks bad when we see things hit the city and how they crumble. It looks fake. It looks very CGI. It just doesn't look like a city to me.
How do you think this looked in 2002? Was it?
It looked awesome.
It probably, yeah. It's one of those things that probably didn't age as well. I do not disagree with you at all. Now we've got different comparisons, so we know it's like, oh, that should probably be textured differently or something. So I don't.
And remember, everyone's looking at that on a tube television too, for the most part.
That's a good point.
We're also spoiled by Marvel movies now. I forgot the battle outside Minas Tirith with the ghosts. It's been so long since I seen it. I thought that was the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And when I paused it because I was doing laundry, and I saw I had an hour and 47 minutes left, I went, holy fucking shit, are you kidding me?
You feel as bleak as Frodo when you see how much movie is left.
Exactly, I did. My heart fucking sank. I was like, you're shitting me. I completely forgot that they went to the Black Gate.
And that's the problem with this movie is there's like a number of false endings. It just seems like, okay.
Let's wait for the ending, because that's...
Are we at the ending right now?
No, I got part 3 to go over.
He's got to read part 3. Is Frodo even in part 2? Okay.
No.
All right, let's get to part 3, because this is major Frodo time, and Frodo starts to really get on my fucking nerves.
All right, so here we go. Part 3 has Aragorn decides to march to Mordor to distract Sauron from Frodo, now extremely weak. Of all Sauron's remaining forces, march to meet Aragorn's diversion, allowing the hobbits to reach Mount Doom. Gollum, who survived his earlier fall, attacks them, but Frodo still manages to enter the mountain. There he succumbs to the ring's power, putting it on his finger. But Gollum manages to bite his finger off and reclaim it. As they struggle together and fall off the ledge, Frodo clings to it with one hand as remorse and guilt flood his mind in the wake of his succumbing to the ring, when Sam's unwavering faith in his friend demands Frodo reach for Sam's stretched hand, saving Frodo's life. Gollum falls and dies. Gets literally melted in lava. The ring, which fell with him, disintegrates into the lava, causing the Barad-dûr to crumble as the Eye of Sauron explodes, destroying the Dark Lord once and for all. Aragorn's army emerges victorious, and the enemies of the lands of Mordor collapse into earth, and Mount Doom erupts, with Frodo and Sam narrowly escaping the lava. Gandalf rescues the hobbits with the help of the Eagles, and then surviving Fellowship is happily reunited in Minas Tirith. Aragorn is crowned King of Gondor and marries Arwen. The hobbits return home to the Shire, where Sam marries Rosie Cotton. 4 years later, Frodo, still plagued with the pain of his wound inflicted by the Witch King and suffering from trauma, departs Middle-earth to the Undying Lands with his uncle Bilbo, Gandalf, and the elves. He leaves Sam the Red Book of the Westmarch, which details their adventures, and Sam returns to the Shire, where he embraces Rosie and their children.
Man, that Bilbo character annoys the hell out of me.
Did you see how how old they made him look and all that? I'm like,
He just
wow.
reminds me of like a used car dealer. I don't know. There's something about him. He's so shady. I don't know.
Bilbo, really?
Oh, yeah.
Bilbo's kind of like a paragon of innocence in the book and all that. Like, in a lot of the things about the hobbits, the most mischievous ones, Merry and Pippin, like with thieves and stuff like that. But his advanced age, he was probably cranky, because there were people that wanted things from him, like his treasure and, to take
His pot
over
of gold.
kind of, yeah.
Lucky Charms,
Like,
right? Yeah.
In all honesty,
talking
Eric,
about
it's
the
kind of like
leprechaun.
that. Yeah.
Well, he dresses
what
like a
saved
leprechaun.
him.
Is there a difference?
I'd love to correct you here, but you're right. That's
Yeah.
totally fair. Yeah.
It does.
They want my
But
pot
he's
of
saved
gold.
by he cares
Always
more
want my
about
pot of
comfort
gold.
than power and all of that. And he was looking at Gollum as just like a thing to be pitied. He never wanted to kill anything.
And this is the part of the story. I know Frodo is the titular hero of the movie because he's the one carrying the ring. But out of the 4 hobbits, this is Elijah Wood's worst performance. It gets grating after a while.
Not a fan.
Yeah, we've built everything up to him throwing the ring into Mount Doom, only to see, to have him succumb to the power of the ring. It's
Then
like,
have whiny
okay,
Sam save him. Don't die on me.
well,
Ugh.
it's the thing is we've had a major hero turn for Pippin and Merry, where they're actually heroes in their own right because they actually fought in the battles and everything, and to have this character turn, almost like a wrestling heel turn for Frodo at the point of where he's supposed to be the hero, it just doesn't add up for me.
You know what the turn was? When they were doing their little jig dance on the table with their drinks. That's where it all, I'm like, yep,
That's
kill them off.
where it
They're
all
done.
went wrong.
That's where they went from, hero to loser.
There's overacting, in my opinion, between Elijah Wood and Sean Astin. It gets on my nerves. And do we ever see Frodo's hand again? Because I want to say that we see his hand again and his finger's not bit off in one of the million endings of this movie.
I thought I saw his finger missing.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe so. Because I'm sure they did it with a green sleeve and stuff like that.
Right.
So does it come across to you that at the end of all this, Sam was the hero? Because
It does
Sam
for
is
me.
the one that carried him, and Sam is the one that buried the burden, and he wasn't the one who was corrupted. It was the friendship journey, and it
Right.
was so important to him that he could withstand that power of evil because he wanted to make sure that Frodo was taken care of.
Sam's actually the most pure of heart.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say this, I don't like all of the false endings. That really grates on my nerves a lot. But the one that touched me the most and was actually moving is them in the pub, the 4 of them sitting there. And everybody's having a good time, but they aren't. And they're sitting there like they're
Shell shocked, right?
It's almost like they know that they've lived the best moments of their lives and they don't know how to cope with that. To me, that should have been the end of the movie. They have to come to terms with the fact that they're never going to have another adventure. It's kind of a downer, and that would be kind of a downer ending, but it's better than the one that we get.
When they go off on the ship, you mean?
Yeah, that I think is just absolutely ridiculousness.
I think it tastes better in the animated version, to be honest with you, like where everything kind of leads up to that point. And I don't know if you guys saw the animated version. Like, did you see the
No,
Hobbit
I
and then
haven't.
the Return of the King
There's
and
an
all that?
animated version of this?
There is. It's Rankin Boss, who did Thundercats and all that. They did The Hobbit originally, and then Ralph
78, I think so.
Yeah, and Ralph Bakshi did the sort of a rotoscoped version with Frank Frazetta of The Lord of the Rings, which is an absolute trip. If you like that kind of thing,
So you have to drop
it's
acid
wonky.
to watch it?
I'm not going to say no to that. That's
Okay.
true.
I'm not going against Ted, though, on here. I kind of disagree with everything that he's saying here. Though I agree that Elijah Wood's performance is not, I think, the best in the world. But that also could be because Sam's character is really good, because his character, like we just said, takes over kind of the hero portion of this. Now, it's unfair that because he doesn't have the ring very long. He hesitates about giving the ring back as well. So if he had that ring longer, it could have affected him. Let's face it. I mean, Frodo's had this ring for a very long time. compared
Yep.
to a Sam who just had it for hours, right? And then as far as when they're in the pub, they're looking around and seeing how much maybe these people don't appreciate what just happened, because they were oblivious of the world outside of their own dwellings, right? And now they realize what the world really is about and what they had to go through to protect the Shire, because they love the Shire. I don't know if they want to go on another adventure, but I think they're very appreciative of what they have done to keep what they love, the Shire, here. And so I like that for that purpose. And I don't feel like that is the false ending. My false ending that I don't care for, what we just talked about, the other battle that we just went through. And now we're going to another battle so we can take the eye off of Frodo and Sam. That battle itself is a waste of my time. It doesn't bring anything to the table. I mean, we just had a fantastic
Talking about the one at the
battle.
Black Gate?
Yeah, because we just had
It doesn't bring anything to the table?
For me, it doesn't. I mean, we just had... Here's the thing. We've already had great battles in the Two Towers. We just had a great battle that we just watched. I'm not ready for another battle. It's way too soon. And for me, I'm just done with the battle sequences.
Well, he had his Braveheart moment, right? So, like the Oscar speech, so in terms of that, the idea was from the plot that they're going to draw attention away by doing that. So they know it was a fool's errand, that they could not win. But they were going to do it just on the offhand chance that it would draw them away from Frodo, and it worked.
And then all the land just kind of goes away from underneath all the bad guys, but the good guys are on the part of the land that doesn't get affected.
Is that what's throwing you, or is the giant flaming eyeball, on the tire? Like, which one of those would you prefer? Because you live in their world, and that shit happens in their world.
How about the giant bowling ball?
I just don't know how those two things are connected, so...
Well, I mean, you could also look at it this way, too. They do have Gandalf to protect them, so it's like, he does have magic powers that would help with that, too.
True, but it doesn't do anything in that scene that makes me think that's what happened.
I kind of with Gimli, with the ghosts, maybe we should keep them around because they're pretty good in a fight.
They could be useful later.
Yeah, here's the thing. The part that I don't care for with that sequence is the fact that Aragorn is going to send everybody into... basically a suicide mission. I agree with Ken. You just fought a battle, and now you're going to send everybody on basically a suicide mission. That's kind of a little far-fetched, but it does set up one of the coolest interactions with, I guess he's the figurehead for Sauron, that comes out and tries to convince him that Frodo's dead and shows him the mithril suit. I love how he gets his head chopped off. I think that's pretty funny.
Yeah, it reminds me of Thor in the Endgame when he finds
Thanos.
When he finds Thanos and he chops Thanos. So that's what it reminds me of.
But I get it. Here again, it's a fantasy. Like Justin said, we're living in their world. Mount Doom explodes, and it just so happens that it takes out all the orcs. I don't think it's necessarily brave that they got surrounded on all sides and we're going to be basically slaughtered wholesale by the orcs, as they were not going to be able to win that battle.
Oh, definitely not.
But
they had zero advantage. Yeah.
And this is my problem with the whole Frodo thing. It creates a false tension. It's like, okay, something's got to give here. Are we going to kill the king? The movie's titled Return of the King. And the king's running into a suicide mission, and we're going to sit here and create a false tension over whether or not Frodo's going to throw the goddamn ring into the fire. Pick which one you want. Which tension do you want to build? But you really can't have both, because then you need to change the title of the movie.
That's why the movie will never beat the book, because the book, you can have all these different things going on at once, and you can feel that tension. So he did an admirable job, and probably the best that he could do with this, Peter Jackson being he. But you can't recreate everything like that.
Right.
Because it is a lot more in the book of Frodo and Gollum and, Sam, and they're spending time together. Like, could be weeks, could be a month, it could be months, things like that. And similarly with Gimli and Legolas, and you barely give them time to germinate a friendship. It's there. There's these deeper paths you can walk down. I say this is one of my favorite things is read it, do the audiobook, anything else like that. Maybe listening to these 3 episodes will get your listeners into it.
Maybe not.
I don't know.
mean,
you got some Star Trek listeners, so
we- we do find out that they've been walking for a year.
Yeah.
Because Gandalf mentions a time frame of how long everything's taken. Because that's another thing that we really don't get in any of the three movies, is exactly what kind of a time frame we're dealing with. That was kind of jarring when you hear the fact that when Gandalf talks about this whole process has taken over a year. It's like, wow, okay. And that's kind of what sets me up with the false ending that I like, which is them in the pub. And I think, Ken, it's just a matter of interpretation
Right.
of that particular
I'm not saying
thing.
you're
And
wrong, but you are.
it's just, yeah, it's just,
he really
it's-
wants to know about the prophecy of the ale. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
it's a major point in the movie.
Hey, I wanted to say something really quick because we kind of skipped over it. Because one of my favorite parts in this whole movie is the spider itself.
Oh,
Going in-
Shelob, yeah.
Going into that tunnel, for me, when I first saw it, it was creepy. Being in a theater, especially setting, I'm going in there and wondering when this thing's going to pop out and try to kill him, right? It's probably my favorite part in the movie.
This is going to sound mean, but is that your favorite Elijah Wood performance in this when he was stung by the spider and he's
first
like
of all,
sitting
when he
there?
gets stung at the spider, his
big
reaction to it for me
saucer
was
blue eyes and stuff.
it kind of bothered me a little bit, but everything building up to it was really, really good. You know, you got the webs and stuff like that inside the cave and him getting trapped. I really enjoy that part of the movie because it's very suspenseful. And I'm not a big fan of spiders. Spiders freak you out a little bit. This section of the movie would do that to you.
There's books and video games that you can do now that have an anti-arachnid mode. You can get the version that doesn't have spiders in it. So it is a very
Really?
real fear for a lot of people.
That's
And
interesting.
I do think that this is the CGI that holds up really well because there's really nothing that you can hold it to. You know, it's like, oh, it's a giant spider. That's what a giant spider would look like.
You
That's
could even
exactly
think
right.
that it doesn't even look like CGI. It looks like it could be how they used to do it. You know, kind of
A practical effect.
a practical event. It looks more like that to me. And this is another situation where Sam looks, you know, like the hero because he fights the spider off.
Like the orcs in this one, are they give them
Mhm.
like just this great little flavor? You know, they're so gross, and they're just talking about it, they're fighting over the shirt and stuff. Like I like the orcs in this section a lot.
I like when they're all talking about Sheila. It's almost kind of a little comical. She doesn't kill him, and what kind of just sounds like a fun little story that they're telling.
Yeah, and Gollum knows her enough to know how to appease her, you know, not get caught himself. Or maybe
Mhm.
he's just so tainted she doesn't want anything to do with him.
Well, there's not much there. There's not a
No,
lot of meat
yeah.
on the bone there. So.
About the ultimate end of the movie, Frodo gives the book to Sam and tells him that you can write the final chapters of another adventure that you have, but we really know that Sam's never going to have an adventure. So why exactly does Frodo go to travel to the elven heaven, essentially? Why
He's
is
used up. They were talking about this in the other one, feeling like too much bread, you know, with not enough butter. The ring has worn him down to the point where he just kind of feels empty. You know,
He's still in a lot of
he
pain
had-
physically, too.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, like
From
there-
the,
I
from
mean,
the sword. The
Right,
wound that
I
he
mean,
did.
that wound
the
will never
sword,
heal.
the sword wound that will never heal, being stabbed by the spider, you know, like stung by it. It probably looks like Batman's back. You know, it's terrible.
Right.
And
Having
I
just
mean,
to hang out
he's
with
lived.
Sam and you know, for
He's
a long
lived
period of
100
time.
traumas.
That's torture by itself, actually. Yeah.
He was nearly stabbed by a troll in the first one, and you know, like there's all this kind of terrible stuff that he's got to live with every day. So he's had kind of like the worst experience out of everyone that didn't die. There's a lot there.
And Gandalf has to leave because there's no more evil.
The
'Cause he's
time
already
it's the
been
time
dead.
of men, and magic was disappearing, so he's part of that.
Gandalf
Okay.
has already died already. So one of the things that I read is Gandalf was put there by, we could say, a god or the gods to protect man. And now
All right.
that they've won, Gandalf is no longer needed. But Gandalf already had died and was reborn. So now that he has accomplished what he needed to accomplish, there's nothing left for him to do.
He was based on a character of Scandinavian myth that I can't think of the name right now, but that's where Gandalf kind
The
of came
Mormons?
from. No, Scandinavian myth. No.
Well, that brings up an interesting question. We know because of Tolkien that there's a Christian element here, and And it's something that's similar to a lot of books of the time, like Lord of the Flies, where there is a Christ-like character. So who then is the Christ-like character? Is it Gandalf because he's risen from the dead? Or is it Frodo because he's pure of heart and he's I guess, the ultimate hero of the movie? Or is it Aragorn, who is the titular king, who bows and bends his knee before those that are considered less than him? After studying and reading Lord of the Flies, you see this theme pop up in these stories, and there's a definite theme here. There's too many of the Christ-like character.
It's way more subtle
three.
than that.
I think it's all those characters that you just met. But I go with Aragorn the most in here because of the original line. His great-great-great-grandfather, I guess, he is the one that represents the Adam, who took the apple from the tree, bit the apple from the tree. And he is kind of like the Christ figure that rejects the apple, fulfills what man's purpose was to be with all along. That's why we have it's the return of the king.
Gotcha.
At least that's how I look at it. I mean, other people might look at it different, but that's where I would lean on. As Aragorn's probably the most Christ-like figure of this movie.
Maybe I'm looking too much into it. When you see these parallels, I always try to make those connections. It's just a force of habit that I have, like when you're doing some of these tales like this, because there are running themes similar through a lot of these different stories. And this one was a little confusing to try to actually get, because essentially Gandalf is ascending to heaven, and you have Frodo, who's never died, going to heaven.
You have Aragorn, who's ruling the world.
And he's humble. Right.
So that's why I think he's the Christ-like figure here. And I think it's funny that Christians look at this movie and they get all goo-goo over it. And I'm a Christian, but I look at Harry Potter, who has sorcerers and good wizards and bad wizards and all that. When Harry Potter came out, Christian groups were like, "No, that's so bad. That's the devil." But if you watch Lord of the Rings and we have wizards good and bad over here, that's okay. So
the same thing can be said about the Narnia books as well.
But the Narnia books have the easiest parallel because Aslan is a stand-in for Jesus.
Yes, exactly.
And this was written with a lot more subtlety than that, and there are things that happen to all those characters, like you said, but it's like at the end of the day, it's like none of them are deities, none of them are demigods, none of them are anything.
Right.
It's a defter hand of writing that did that. Whereas, C.S. Lewis just kind of like, hey, there's this giant lion and he's Jesus.
Exactly.
And I mean, Frodo did almost die twice and come back. So
and let's be perfectly honest. There would be no Harry Potter. There would be no Chronicles of Narnia without Lord of the Rings. Let's put everything on the table. Without these books,
they're all from the same area
Tolkien's
too.
Universe, without his universe and what the stuff that he created here, there's none of these stories.
There's not Star Wars without this.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. You could actually say that even though Lucas took from many different things to create Star Wars, there's a very similar thread. That's just my opinion.
I think it's very interesting that you said about that sort of Christian parallel, because that's not something that I've ever really considered besides the obvious part for Gandalf. But with Aragorn, I think that's a pretty interesting point of discussion. And I'm glad that you brought that to my attention, because maybe I'll watch it differently next time.
Yeah, that's one of the coolest parts. He bows to Frodo and the four hobbits, to the people who are considered less than them. And everybody follows his lead.
Yeah, because didn't he say never bow to anyone or something?
Exactly. You never have to bow to anyone.
Yeah.
And
I just love the look on Merry and Pippin's face.
And that could have been one. And that could have been the ending right there, where he ends up there.
Exactly.
Here's the thing: I don't mind them going a little further, and I don't mind them leaving on the boat. I don't think you need to go back to the Shire after that. I think watching that boat go off into the sunset, you should be able to just be done with it right there and then. We don't need another few more minutes. That's just my opinion. I don't understand going back to the Shire and seeing the wife and the kids.
It almost makes it sad.
To a certain extent.
In my opinion.
Like, Sam was going to give up everything and go with him, and it's like, no, Sam, no.
Yeah,
why wouldn't he?
Well, which is another Christ-like thing where he's going to give up everything to follow him.
Right.
And it's like where Sam was actually probably the real hero.
You Where
Right.
you
I mean-
may go.
Right.
Join us
Sister Act.
next week for Sister
Oh,
Act.
Sister Act, yeah. It's hard not to make the parallels, in my opinion. The whole
By the
thing
way-
of Sam giving up everything to follow Frodo, I guess because he did it once, he would do it again. It just doesn't seem like his character that now that he has a family, he's going to give up. I don't know. It just...
In the book.
Is it like Brokeback Mountain? You know, he got married, but he still wants to go with Frodo. And
So
that's
wants
a
to go
whole
with.
different movie.
That's where you're going on
Well,
this.
you know,
and
that's
saying
a
you're-
Great
you're
reference.
And
Harry
that's-
Potter,
yeah.
but you're
That
going
is
toward.
And that is
Went from
actually the
Jesus to
saddest love
Brokeback
story.
Mountain. But here's the thing.
That's a good ass movie, by the way. I'm
You
just
have-
saying,
That's the saddest movie ever.
it's
you
a
have-
good movie.
Merry and Pippin. You almost feel like there is some kind of weird relationship between the two there, and
They're
then
cousins.
No, I think they're just best buddies.
You
They're
just
best
think
buddies
they're best
and
buddies?
cousins. They're literally
Okay.
cousins, and they're cousins.
Yeah,
of
Sometimes
Frodo.
I feel like it comes off being a little bit more than cousins.
The
Uh-oh.
only two that get weird, and it's like Randall Graves says in Clerks 2, when Frodo gives Sam that ultra gay look when they're all reunited in the Elven.
Reunited and it feels.
I
Look,
mean,
I don't
good.
agree with Kevin Smith on everything, and I don't claim to. I like his work. I think that you're invoking from his weakest film. So right now,
Clerks 3.
No,
Clerks
Clerks 3 is
2.
way better than Clerks 2.
Oh, I don't know about that one.
Clerks
Well,
3 is
you know.
so good.
Did you say Clerks 3 is so good?
It is. It is so good.
Wow.
It's
We might have
I'm sorry,
to bring Justin
Justin.
back for a
I'm
special
sorry.
episode.
Did you say Clerks 3 as in
Now we
one,
got Eric.
two,
We got Eric talking finally.
the number 3?
No. I did. When you are of a certain age and you look back and you can see yourself in those characters in Dante and Randall, it hits
We'll-
on so many levels. I think
we'll
it's
put
so
it
much
this
better
way.
than 2.
We'll put it this way, Eric. I haven't.
Oh.
I watched it. I watched the times that I've watched it was before everything happened to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if after everything that happened to me, I can watch it the same way. I don't know. Coming back from the dead changes my perspective on the movie a little bit. There are parts that I don't like about the movie. Well, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
It's not
But
there.
Just gonna,
maybe we can bring Justin back for a special
just
episode.
gonna bite my tongue on this one for now. Final reviews?
I'll go first.
Go ahead, man.
There's a lot that I like about the movie. I'm going to give it a solid B because it's not my favorite. My favorite is the Two Towers. I don't believe it deserved the Oscar for Best Picture. I
What was
think
it up
that they
against?
gave it. It was a down year, I believe, and I think that this was an achievement award for Peter Jackson for doing the entire trilogy because I don't think that the acting stands up, except in a couple of cases. For the series itself, I give the series itself a B+. It's an amazing series. And like I said, a lot of the stuff that we take for granted as far as modern day storytelling, modern day, for better lack of a better term, geekdom or dorkening, mention the network,
Mhm.
comes directly out of this. Without this, hard telling where we sit today. But Peter Jackson did an amazing job. For the most part, it's beautifully shot. The series is a solid B+. Return of the King is a B for me.
Okay, cool. I'll give my review. This movie sucks. I'm very thankful the series is over. If you ever make me watch it again, I will kill each and every one of you because it's 9 hours of my life I'll never get back.
You know what you're doing for your birthday next year.
Yeah, right. That's right. This movie is a D as in dull, like really dull. 3 hours and 21 minutes worth of dullness, and that's not even the director's cut. Have fun. This is just not my cup of tea. I could not get in this movie at all. Nope. It's a D as in dull. Ken, what do you got?
So first off, this movie did go up against Master and Commander, Seabiscuit, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, and The Last Samurai. So not a lot of great competition, though I do prefer Pirates of the Caribbean over
I
this
like
movie.
Master and Commander for the record. Also, another Billy Boyd film. Just putting that out there. But
I like
I
Last
liked it.
Samurai.
I like
But-
Last Samurai as well. But
And I
yeah.
like this movie too, but I think the only one that I like more than Lord of the Rings on that list is Pirates of the Caribbean. But
I'm so glad you didn't say Seabiscuit, by the way, because I could
Yeah.
care less about Seabiscuit.
it's about a
Yeah.
horse that runs. I agree with Ted as far as it's not the best movie out of the three. It's not the one that should have won an Academy Award. If anything, it would have been The Two Towers. I think Two Towers, just a better story from beginning to end. it's just more consistent. The pacing is better. I think the false endings in this one do get on the nerves a little bit. I agree with Ted a little bit with the overacting could also get on my nerves a little bit. I don't know if it's better or worse than Fellowship of the Ring. I almost feel like it's equal. So I do give it a B like Ted's giving it. And I also would give the series a B plus based on the achievement of what Peter Jackson did. Peter Jackson, if you haven't watched recently the stuff that he's done with the Beatles, I almost feel like he's eclipsed George Lucas in what he's brought to the table as far as
Whoa.
Yes, he's eclipsed George Lucas. I'm not talking about
Star
Wars.
He wasn't corrupted by his own powers. Yeah, good call.
Yeah, because George Lucas sold his children to Disney. So,
right. Well, what I'm saying is, I feel like Peter Jackson has been able to take technology and take it up another level, whereas George Lucas did that, but then kind of flatlined a little bit. When we got to the prequels, I just feel like those things are so dated, whereas the original trilogy still stands as a crowning achievement. Whereas Peter Jackson is still amazing us with things that he's doing 20 years later after The Lord of the Rings. That's why I'm saying Peter Jackson, I prefer him over, George Lucas. And he doesn't
He's
force
a better
us.
Director.
He's a better director, and he doesn't force us to hear his script. We don't have to hear a script from Peter Jackson. And I also like these little roles that Peter Jackson throws himself in here and there throughout the whole series. He shows up in parts of all three movies, which I think is kind of cool. But I agree
why
with
did this turn into a George Lucas band fest all of a sudden here? We're just like... It's like, screw George Lucas.
Well, I just think, because Ted says there's only one return, and that's of the Jedi.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
And that's why I will give a B plus for what Peter Jackson has brought to the table with this trilogy.
Cool. Justin, what, A plus for you? A plus for the series? Do we even need to...
I look at this differently, obviously, because I read the books. I started off reading these books when I was in 4th grade.
Did you like the books better in the movie?
Oh, the books are amazing. The books are so much better than the movie. The movies are great for what they do, but they leave out characters. They create romantic subplots that aren't there, and like a lot of the stuff where it's like, oh, okay, this wasn't really a thing, but I see why they have to do it.
Are there more hardcore sex scenes in the books?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
It's funny because there's like zero sex at all in Lord of the Rings, so it's just not.
Wouldn't make it any better. Just
no
sidebar there.
It's funny looking at it like through my eyes, and getting a good grip of like what Eric saw as someone who didn't really care for it. Like, what didn't he care for it? Hearing what Ted has to say, hearing what Ken has to say, it's like taking those in. It's cool to look back at this stuff and see it through your eyes, going with you on it. Because, if you had asked me before this podcast, I'd be like, oh, A plus on all three of them. But it's like there are parts that you can look at and critically say, well, this isn't great or that isn't great. It's an A for me. It's my favorite because it's my favorite part of the story. Like that whole part with Eowyn in the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, that's like the climax of everything for me. I love that. In the book, it's so much better with Frodo and all that. And there really is a lot to take away from this. I think for the series is an A. It's something that I'm going to come back to and watch for the rest of my life because I love it. Like how you guys feel about your favorite, movies or your favorite, if you have a favorite trilogy. I don't think that this will be my favorite trilogy because Back to the Future is like all three of them together are perfection, but this is great. Like I love it. It's an A and an A.
It's an interesting reference you make there with my quote unquote hatred of this movie, but my hatred is geared towards number one, the genre. I don't like the medieval genre. It'd be like someone, for example, who hates stupid slapstick comedies, for example. Like I know people out there that can't stand like the Naked Gun movies, hate them. But there are
Victor. Roger.
No, now you're talking Airplane.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying.
But see, that's the same way people feel about these movies. They're like, how can
I get
you
it.
not like these movies?
I, for one, would rather not watch movies about basketball, but it's just a way different thing.
One-on-one.
I look at this stuff and like the level of detail that they put into the swords and all that. Like all this stuff was cool. So,
but see, yeah, if that's
but
something...
you guys make good points. You really do. It's like, the first one does have a shit ton of walking in it. And the idea of like the false endings, I never thought of it like that, but because I'm thinking about it from the book and I'm thinking about, well, this isn't like what it is in the book and there's pieces that are missing. But you guys are like, as someone who comes in and just looks at it objectively, you're like, well, they could have ended it there. I'm like, shit, you're right. Like they could have, but there's so much more. Like there's appendices that they're not even going to touch.
Which obviously, if you're doing a movie from a book, you're cutting out a whole bunch of it. But that's typical of any type of Hollywood scenario versus a book. So to wrap up this burrito here, Ted, where can they find us out there?
We can be found on X/Twitter, if anybody's still on X/Twitter after the anti-Semitic rants that have been going on. We are there. We're hooked on _movies. We promise there won't be any of that nonsense going on there.
You sure about that?
And yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And
not yet.
And of course, please listen to us on whatever podcast network that you're listening to us on, whether it be Spotify, Good Pods, Apple. We can be found all over. Leave us a 5-star rating and give us a nice review, and it helps us get noticed and get seen. And you never know, if we get enough reviews, maybe we can be Rotten Tomatoes certified someday.
Which we probably never will be. Ken, tell us about Facebook.
Hey, now, we got to have dreams.
That was the vision Ken saw.
Eric's dream is that he never gets to watch this movie ever again. Anyway.
That'll be a reality, actually. But
join us on our Facebook page, Hooked on Movies. We talk about movies like this.
And how Spinal Tap 2 is coming.
Spinal Tap 2.
1960s crime movie starring a Hollywood legend that's technically a Die Hard prequel. Okay. I like the one, Why Peter Jackson Should Return to Horror. My favorite Peter Jackson.
The Frighteners.
The Frighteners.
Yeah,
yep.
some great stuff, Ken, you're putting out there.
And then why you should keep physical copies of your DVDs and Blu-rays.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're preaching to the choir there.
Exactly.
Yep.
Especially in this day and age where we see a lot of movies get changed.
Oh, my
goodness.
goodness.
They pick out parts of the movies.
Yeah.
Especially the streaming services right now are removing certain parts of movies because they may be offensive.
Forbid anyone gets offended in this day and age. Oh, my goodness.
And like this article will say, when you buy a streaming movie, you're really just long-term renting. You don't actually own that movie.
Yeah, because if you nix the streaming service, bye-bye.
Well, that streaming service goes under. Then you don't have it any longer.
Well, I mean, look what happened with, what was it, like Real DVD or something like that? Was Ultraviolet and all that?
Oh, I remember those.
Like you have a collection. I think I still have those movies, but now they've transferred over to Vudu.
Right, because they got bought out.
Right.
By Walmart. Yeah, so... Yeah, but you're absolutely right.
Nothing
what do you do if you don't have internet?
Copy, just have a physical copy. Go with your favorite movies, buy a physical copy, and then get a digital copy so you don't have to get off your lazy ass and pull it off your shelf. You could just go ahead and get the remote and stream it. So, but
you guys should post. You should post to Facebook what 5 movies you would keep if you could only keep 5 copies of a physical movie. Like, what would be your top 5?
Oh, if you ever on a desert island,
that'd be a fun post.
The original Star Wars movies without the editing.
Well, you don't have to say it here. That's the beautiful part.
That's what I'm saying right
it.
off the bat.
You make a social media post about it. So then you can talk about it on your next episode.
That's why I still have the DVDs with the original uncut versions on them.
Anyway, join our Facebook group, Hooked on Movies.
Sweet. All right. Well, thank you so much. That's all the time we have for this episode. As always, thank you, and have a pleasant tomorrow.
See you at the movies.
See you next time on Hooked on Movies.
Bye.